Hey, welcome to the Corey Jones Show. I am, of course, your host, Corey Jones, also the CEO and owner of Safety Man Consulting, safetyman.co. And my goal in life is to bring you things that are going to keep you safe, secure, and give you the ability to survive in any kind of traumatic emergency, whether it be a medical event, a criminal event, an active shooter, or anything like that. That's what I do to keep you alive. And with this show, the Corey Jones Show, I bring in guests that are experts in their field, and their fields a lot of times surround about the things that I do, about giving other people their chance to excel, survive, and just be the best they can be despite any circumstances that they were dealt. So I'm here with Brett DiNovi. He is the man in charge of Brett DiNovi Associates, or BDA. Can you tell me exactly about you, how you got to where you're going, your education and training and so forth, Brett?
Yeah, I went to West Virginia University. Initially, I went there for a full ride for wrestling, and the injuries just plagued me like crazy. So at that point, I got real lucky that, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the behavioral psychology founders, but I got real lucky that at WVU, Dr. Julie Vargas, which is B.F. Skinner's daughter, kind of took me under her wing, and she was a professor there. So I got to learn a lot about what's called applied behavior analysis and behavior science, straight from the Skinner lineage. So that was fortunate break after having an injury, just refocusing time and energy on something, because it can be pretty. You've been an athlete, you know how it is when you're injured. It can be, you can feel pretty down. So that allowed me to focus the career in behavioral psychology, and she allowed me to teach her course there. Her and Dr. Ernest Vargas, and at the university in graduate school, went to grad school there. And my father had a brain injury, and at that point in time, I'm probably 96, I'm pretty old. 1996, I came back from WVU, helped my father out, and started working in the field of applied behavior analysis and with kids with severe autism, and then any kids with behavioral challenges. It's kind of how I got back to New Jersey, and this is actually where I grew up.
All right, so some of our guests, I fortunately was able to take psychology in high school, so B.F. Skinner is not lost on me, but a lot of people he may be. So you can kind of tell me, I think he was claimed to fame for what, operant conditioning and classical conditioning? Is that the can you tell us kind of like what that is and how that applies to what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah, operant conditioning is just basically looking at increasing behaviors through positive reinforcement. I must say that in the past 10 years, the field of behavioral science has been misunderstood a little bit. And when they think of B.F. Skinner's works and the application of it, they sort of, a lot of folks that aren't real familiar with it think it involves coercive, aversive punishment. But that's the exact opposite of what behavior analysis is, and its application to students in schools is primarily all positive reinforcement. So, yeah, operant conditioning is, it's behavior shaped by positive consequences.
Okay, and obviously you found that that's definitely more beneficial than the polar opposite, which would be punishment for negative behavior.
Exactly. I mean, we're in a few hundred public schools in New Jersey, PA, Maine, Florida, Texas, and California, and I've seen we started this business about 19 years ago, or actually I started it. There were no associates for research. It was me, and just trying to grind and build it from scratch. But at the time, 19 years ago, behavior analysis wasn't real understood. But now, people look at it, and in the schools, it's understood that you don't want to use restrictive procedures that are aversive or punishing. Very rarely. The only time that you would want to, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding around punishment. Punishment isn't intended to be some undesirable consequence that harms anyone. When the very few times that you're trying to decrease behavior, that's all it means. Punishment just means you're decreasing future behavior. It doesn't mean you have to be harmful, no noxious stimuli. The few times that you do use it, it's usually meant to save a child's life. Okay. So in other words, a kid running into the street. I actually have a stepson on the autism spectrum, so there were times that life-saving behavior analytic procedures were implemented just to prevent him from running in the street. But 99% of the time, it's positive strategies.
Okay.
Yep.
So with this, I just saw a news story maybe 2 days ago where they said that the children diagnosed on the autism spectrum is going up.
Yeah.
However, causality and chronology aren't always equal. So what would your thoughts be on that? Are more kids being diagnosed with autism, or the testing and indicators being more readily apparent to people?
I think it's a combination.
Okay.
You know, parts of New Jersey actually are kind of the epicenter of where autism is most concentrated. So I would say it's a combination of increased acuity when it comes to diagnostics, as well as possibly an increase in the actual challenges of autism. So you may have a combination.
Okay. Okay. So how did you apply that initial education and that initial exposure to where you headed in your career now?
So can you clarify when you mean the initial exposure?
Yeah, your initial training, and then you know being around people that are diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and their teachers and their handlers, and then how that migrated into where you are now.
Yep. Well, actually, at West Virginia University, I had the opportunity to work at the Autism Training Center down in southern West Virginia. But then at the same time in graduate school, I was able to do an internship in industrial psychology. So I was able to learn a little bit how to operate a business, as well as how to work with clients. And again, it's one thing I would love to tell your viewers, if you don't mind, is that applied behavior analysis is not. It's been pigeonholed to autism and developmental disabilities, but it's applied to business. It's applied to safety. It's applied to sports. I know you had one of my colleagues, Paulie, on, who's MMA. You know, so the application of the science, it changes lives in many areas. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, you did. Yeah, you showed just how that migrated and how you were able to take all that initial exposure and just blossom it, and then being able to help a myriad of people.
Yeah, you know? I'm just a real fan of disseminating the science, and that's really what I would, you know, if anyone is watching the show and you're in college and you're not sure where you want to, what you want to study, I mean, for me, my decision was what would it be better than studying a science that helps you understand why people do what they do. So I would encourage. The job market is really strong in that area for board certified behavior analysts. There's also a direct clinician level called the registered behavior technician. So with both of those types of clinicians, they do massive behavior change in schools and in homes. So it's a really big opportunity on the rise for people that are looking for a career too.
Okay. So I'm going to make it personal real quick. As a retired law enforcement officer, there's been a push recently, as you're probably aware of, incorporating behavioral experts along with law enforcement to deal with people that are in crisis. Now, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's really important that behavior analysts and board certified behavior analysts work together with first responders as well as law enforcement. Just to be able to we've been involved with some of that training at times, just to make sure that there isn't a misunderstanding where a student or a learner that may be nonverbal that really also has receptive challenges, that learner may not understand the directions being given by law enforcement, and they may not be able to process, and it may look like they're being non-compliant, which could result in more force, you know, and often it's just a matter of understanding why they're doing what they're doing, and then finding a replacement, and that helps minimize tragic events that can occur, like say if an individual is lost, what they call elopement, and they can't really describe.
Right.
You know, they may not follow the directions of law enforcement, but it's because they really don't understand. So
Right.
kind of working and bridging that gap. Now, actually, this is a whole new area that I started getting involved with. I think it actually happened with some of the YouTube videos we have out. Behavior analysis is also used in understanding. You can't necessarily call it interrogation, but interviews.
Yeah.
So by examining micro expressions of the person being interviewed and understanding, a lot of it's Paul Ekman's work.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that name, but does he have a book? I'm going to read it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's to tell your audience, there's 7 micro expressions, and it's pretty interesting because in the field of behavior analysis, some of that is not validated in the applied behavior analysis field, but it really is at the federal level, because many of the officers are trained on understanding that you're getting a baseline just by talking about real typical things like what's your address, where do you live, and then by knowing some of the answers in advance and then injecting, so you're basically taking data on the behavior when the person's calm,
right,
and then injecting something you may know the answer to already, and then looking at the quick micro expressions.
Right. Are you doing that to me right now?
I can't help it, but I saw your right eyebrow just go up. So I don't know what that means, but I don't know his baseline.
Well, my baseline is I have a runny right eye,
Okay.
so sometimes
You're not
you'll
crying?
see me do that. Oh, well, I mean, I'm very excited to have you here, so there may be a little bit of emotion, but no, I'm not
You made
crying.
me blush, man.
I'm not crying.
But really, that area is up and coming, and very few people do it in applied behavior analysis. In fact, it's an area that we're looking at creating a special interest group on, because it's been very detached. What we do has been detached from that for a while, but it's time to kind of bridge that gap. I mean, there's 100 years of science that helps you understand why people do what they do.
Okay, that's incredible. So real quick, I wanted to kind of touch on just your early job before you got to BDA. What were first couple of jobs you did, and how did they prepare you to get into where you are now?
Well, actually, what probably prepared me the most for entrepreneurship is wrestling.
Really?
Believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was one of the hardest experiences I had since ages 8 to ages 22. Wrestling. So the reason why that relates to entrepreneurship and creating an organization to serve people is that every day there's something that's smacking you down, whether it's an allegation against your organization, or or on the positive end, having the grit to keep going when it's difficult to continue expanding the business, especially when there's private equity flooding the market. And we're just an individual family-owned company. So what I would say is having that background of just persistence is kind of what helped. Now when it comes to actual real training, there was a moment, the reason I started the business 19 years ago was sometimes, the biggest changes that you have are a result of something bad happening to you. So,
yeah, of course.
So I was kind of pushed out. In 2004, I was kind of pushed out of a role because I had reported an individual that was in a pretty dangerous situation, and it was something that the residential program put him in, like mechanical restraints.
Right.
And it wasn't too safe, and I think because I spoke up about it, I got pushed out. So the reason I started the business was I just wanted to make sure, this is 2004, I wanted to make sure that all kids are treated with dignity and safely, and those old school applied behavior analysis, coercive, aversive stimuli aren't used, or at least minimized to none. So that when that happened was the day I realized I got to start my own company, because there's got to be a different way.
Yeah, it's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
Could be better. And have you seen the results bear the fruit of that change that you made?
Yeah, and as a result of just kind of building a foundation of understanding the science, been able to apply it to different areas, like first within the organization to be able to serve kids in 6 states and have over 1,100 employees. The reason we were able to grow was basically just understanding the human behavior of the employees. Because as you can see right now, there couldn't be probably a more difficult time that I can remember in my history of getting people to work right now. Okay. If you know, it's been real tough in the direct service industry. So, as you can see in the past couple of years since the pandemic, it's taken a real toll on people, and a lot of people have dropped out of the workforce. Yeah. So how can behavior analysis inspire people to want to come to work, not have to come to work?
Well, that's good. We have to take a break, but when I come back, Mr. DiNovi, I want to talk to you about behavioral safety, and then I definitely wanted to retouch on how the pandemic has affected people. I'm sure there's a myriad of ways that it has, but I kind of want to get your input from a behavior analysis standpoint, how the pandemic affected students, adults, parents, the workforce, and then talk about a little bit about behavioral safety. So thanks for that first half. It went like super fast. Yeah, man. You know, thanks for staying here with the Corey Jones Show, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. So watch these commercials. They're getting really more interesting as the season goes on. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Bob Hokertl from Kings Road Brewing Company. I'm here to tell you about a brand new show on RVN television called Cooking with the King. Each week, we're going to taste and sample some of the best beers the Kings Road Brewing Company has to offer. And we're going to talk to area chefs and restaurant owners as we pair our beer with their signature dishes. We're going to teach you how to cook and eat like a king. Cheers.
A stroke can be easy to detect. A loved one can't speak, perhaps they can't move. But there's another sign of a stroke that many of us can't see. It's called spatial neglect, and it can occur during or after a stroke, causing distorted visual movements. Fortunately, there's a solution by using optical prism technology during rehabilitation. If you or a loved one have experienced a stroke, ask your doctor about spatial neglect. Spatial neglect. See the whole picture at KesslerFoundation.org.
Are you burned out, disenfranchised, disengaged, extremely distracted? Do you feel that you're lost in semantics, over-leveraged, overwhelmed? My name is Lisa Fratelli, and I have a show on RVN TV, always streaming. The name of the show is The Neuroscience of Wealth and Well-Being. The intention of this show is to explain how you can get back to homeostasis, flow states, creativity. It's highly correlated with happiness and well-being. So you can get out of overwhelm, get out of burnout, not feel distracted, and get back to your life. You will hear from experts who will get you back on track so you can enjoy your life again. RVN TV, we're always streaming.
Are you?
Hey, welcome back to the Corey Jones Show. I'm here with Brett DiNovi from BDA, Brett DiNovi Associates. And just before we went on break, we're kind of talking about, we've talked about a lot of things, but one of the things I'm really interested in as a retired law enforcement officer is how his company and Brett specifically talk about the behavioral safety of the clients that they deal with and how we can tie that into, and again, I want to make you feel more comfortable as a guest watching that. In my career in law enforcement, safety was number one, and I'm sure in your career, safety is number one. So how are we tying that all in together today?
Yeah, you're right on point. Safety needs to come before therapy. So in other words, those therapeutic skill building things you're working on, all of that needs to come after the basics, which is safety. So like we were talking about earlier in the discussion, individuals that may have disabilities or just severe behavioral challenges due to trauma. A lot of them that we're working with in Philly right now have gone through a lot. And safety is important when it comes to the behavioral interventions that you would apply. So sometimes the real unsafe behaviors occur very at unusual times. So it's very hard to provide a positive reinforcement for appropriate or to decrease an unsafe behavior because those things sneak up on you. So like in other words, a kid that might get in front of a law enforcement officer and engage in movements that could appear threatening, you may not know he has a disability. So an example of a good use of applied behavior analysis would be training that learner or that student to be able to say, I'm lost. Okay. Even if they have speech challenges, just to be able to expressively be able to tell, an officer, I'm lost, or right. I don't understand, or even sign language, just so that the first responders and the officers understand that, we can take it to another level. Although he could be flailing his hands around, he doesn't have a weapon and he's not a threat.
Yes. Well, if it makes you happy, I retired 4 years ago, and probably 4 years before that, we were getting people who were really good at dealing with people on the autism spectrum that were coming in and giving us a lot of these signs and telling us, you'll probably appreciate these, one voice, talking at a time, slow down, give them a chance to answer one question at a time. Things like that they were happening. So that should make, perfect. Hopefully that makes you happy that they were, I don't want to say they're in front of the 8 ball. I don't know when the 8 ball actually got there, but they were actually teaching us these things. To try and slow it down, to try and, make sure that we're asking the appropriate questions in so far as.
And that's even better, that's called an antecedent intervention. So a proactive, preventative way is what you were taught, which is incredible. It would be great if more first responders had that if they're not yet. One area that's more from the consequence side would be understanding how we could reward the behaviors of staying calm in those situations from the learner, the person receiving the direction from first responders, so that they can stay calm. And if there is a behavior that's threatening and physical from that student, there are different crisis procedures that may differ from what law enforcement was trained on.
Right.
Ways that if a learner doesn't understand the directions, they're less likely to be injured in a physical protective hold. So we do a lot of training on that. So we find ourselves in hundreds of schools doing this crisis training. It's meant to be a hands-off training. But there are times that you have to do some sort of protective hold.
Eventually you do have to go hands-on.
Just to prevent something tragic from occurring.
Hands-on early prevents a lot of hands-on later, right? If you hands-on early.
And let me correct myself, it's not meant to be a consequence in a punitive way, it's meant to be a safety mechanism.
Okay, So ideal client-wise, who's your ideal client? A school, an individual, a system, an agency? What's your ideal client?
So for our organization, it's typically, I'd say 80% of our work is in school districts. And we're both consulting at the classroom level as well as the individual student level. So, and we're constantly trying to actually follow the law and the IEP, or individual education plan, which is to try to have the learner get to a less restrictive placement. We don't want them going from a public school where they may have peers to interact with to suddenly a restricted placement, like being suspended and sent home. And that's one of our initiatives, because the law requires kids to have the least restrictive environment and FAPE, which they call free and appropriate education. And right now, I can't think of a time in the 19 years that I started the business, I can't think of a time that there are more learners being sent home from school because there aren't enough teachers. So that's a service. And then we go into the homes and apply ABA therapy to help the parents and train them, and then try to fade out so that they can manage going to the store, going to the grocery store, preventing outbursts in public.
Is that what we kind of call mainstreaming?
Yeah.
Is that still an okay term?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's real appropriate.
Okay.
anytime you could integrate kids into typical social situations. And the goal, here's the other thing, there's another misunderstanding. I'm glad you invited me. There's a little bit of a misunderstanding of applied behavior analysis, that it's like you're dangling a carrot as, you know, a reward, and it's like artificial reinforcement, and that it doesn't work because it doesn't produce intrinsic motivation. That's not the goal. So the goal of applied behavior analysis is that you may have a reward that, you know, isn't a natural reward, and teachers are saying, I don't want to give him what he wants, you know. But the goal is really just to fade out these artificial rewards. Like say you have a first grader and they got a Skittles for communicating appropriately.
Right.
The goal isn't to keep them on Skittles. Number one, it's unhealthy.
Right.
But number two, it's meant to gradually thin out so that the behavior itself, the social behavior, contacts friends as they get older, gets jobs, you know, maybe finds a significant other. So the things that we want in life, it's not intended to be throwing Skittles and M&Ms at kids, because there's a little misunderstanding about that.
Yeah. So I can tell the passion in your voice when you talk about this, but in the pre-interview, your eyes lit up when you talked about helping entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. Yeah, it really is enjoyable. It's been something that's been real inspiring to me. So, you know, I've been diving into the merger acquisition world a little bit, and I'm seeing at times very large healthcare systems that are private equity backed. Not all, but many are really consolidating the applied behavior analysis market now. So they're buying up a lot of small ABA companies, and what I found is that decisions aren't always made by the family business owners that are clinicians anymore, which is understandable, because not most behavior analysts don't understand the finances behind running a business. But there are times that accidentally a lot of unethical decisions are made when there's big money and millions of dollars poured into companies, because these folks have to make a return on investment.
Yep, that ROI.
So, yeah, exactly. So what I really love doing is I've done some consultation with the private equity groups, but what I like doing is helping entrepreneurs that are, you know, they may be struggling, or they may want to understand how do you apply behavior science to scale an organization.
Right.
We started off 2004 with, you know, me and one person, and then just by being able to scale and understand, helping entrepreneurs understand tax law. I mean, I'm not an accountant, but I had to find the best.
Right.
Finding them through some of those procedures of interviewing them to see if they were full of it or did they know what they were doing.
Exactly.
So
and you're the expert at that. So that's
I try to be. Yeah. So you know, sitting down with the right labor law or employment law attorneys, the right tax attorneys, the accountants, and other advisors to help. Actually, you're probably someone like you is someone I would want to pick your brain about quite a bit as an expert, and those things, being in the industry 33 years, what I really find is a passion. If you're an entrepreneur and you're struggling, reach out. You know, it's something that we love to do. It may not always be me helping that person grow their business, but we have a team that does that. And it's a small part of what we do, but it's really fun.
Indeed, I could tell. I mean, again, this is the second time today your face actually lit up for that. Real quick, a success story, you know, where maybe you had somebody who they didn't think, or their handlers didn't think, if that's the proper word, didn't think that they were going to make progress, and then, you know, you guys got involved and they made progress.
Yeah. I would go back to multiple incidents where kids, a lot in New Jersey, are in their the most restrictive setting. So that restrictive setting is often home. So frequent suspensions, a shortage of staff in schools, and then they're at home, and the parents can't work. But a success story, I would say, is there are multiple ones where we would use applied behavior analysis to systematically bring them back to the school from the home, or to a temporary clinic setting like we have in Mount Laurel here in Burlington County, and then we have one in California and Maine as well. But you know, an in-between step by giving them small baby steps to get back to school, because usually there's a big event that occurs, like a fight in school or a meltdown that results in them being suspended, even though they have an IEP.
Right.
You know, so one story was really great, seeing our team bring a kid back in baby steps to school, because once a big tragic event happened at school, he never wanted to go back, and he was too young to go the next 6 years without school. So what we started off doing is first taking a car and riding through the school parking lot and rewarding that, just for him to get desensitized to it.
Yeah.
Day 2, going on a bus, because the bus was associated with problems. So you phase in the next stimulus. Day 3, going into the lobby of the school and then leaving, just making it all a positive experience, going out to eat afterwards. And then you know, as the weeks go by, increasing the kids' time in school and got them back. So, you know, in a lot of ways, you're adhering to the law, which is getting to a less restrictive environment, right? And secondly, you're saving taxpayers millions of dollars when like, you know, a kid ends up in a private placement that they could have been in a more natural placement.
That's great. Hey, Brett, can you do me a favor? We're out of time. Can you look at that camera and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you should they need either the entrepreneurial assistance or if they have somebody that might be a candidate for your program?
Yeah, absolutely. My assistant, Kristen Holmbeck, is great. She's responsive. If you shoot her a text or a call, it's 609-330-8888, 609-330-8888. And or if you email receptionist@brettdassociates.com, we can connect, and I'd be happy to.
Brett, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I hope you and I can have a relationship in the future.
I do.
And then, you know, maybe, you know, in a year or so from now, you can come back on and let myself and the viewers know how much progress you've had.
I'm not going to let him get away with that, audience. I'm going to get him on my YouTube channel. So it's not going to be a year. So I'm going to be begging you for that.
Okay, you're going to have to twist my arm on that one, you know. But seriously, thanks a lot. God bless you. And I really appreciate what you're doing for the community out there. There's not a lot of people do that. It takes somebody with the drive, tenacity, and education that you have to do that, to help those most vulnerable of our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, my man.
Thank you so much for paying attention to the Corey Jones Show this year. This is Brett DiNovi and Associates, or as he likes to be called, BDA. All right? Stay safe, be ready, and come back next week for the Corey Jones Show.
Peace out.